So this is an introduction to the Scam Pond, which you've heard Ray talk a lot about. The Scam Pond that I run for Ray does a number of activities, one of which is, gaining access to the scammers' call center via their phones and their computers. It allows us to watch what they're doing, to stop scams in progress, to contact the victim, contact their banks, contact the stores they may be going to. Anything we have to do to save them, we will. And we obviously have to be careful that we're not discovered, or we won't be able to save victims. So we're just going to go through some of the things that we see while we're looking at the scammer system, what you see from our side. So what you guys see when a baiter is scam baiting is their computer, and there are often times where we'll have Ray baiting a scammer, and he'll have his computer up, and I have two screens that I'm looking at, one of which is the scammer's view of what they're seeing, and then I can see what Ray is showing on his side. And what's different about that is, while we might see the same AnyDesk, I might see the image of Ray's computer, but I also see the notes that they're taking. The other night I was watching one, and they thought they were getting a victim, and it was a baiter on the phone. And the scammer was literally sending notes to his boss saying, "I'm going to have $2,000 in about 5 minutes." So they were really prepping their boss for something that I enjoyed, because it was a scam baiter. I didn't have to worry about saving them. Although there have been times where I tried to save a scam baiter, which I thought about doing an outtake reel of those calls, where I know a lot of the names. So if it was Mary Roberts, I'd be pretty convinced that it was Ray, and I'd shoot him a message, "Is this you?" Or if it was Vivian, I'd know it might be P. There are a lot of times that they're changing up their characters' names, and I don't know. And I call that person, and come to find out I'm talking to a scam baiter. And we have a good laugh and carry on. So we're going to show you some webcam footage. We're going to show you how Ray was able to take down a call center for about 4 days by stopping their phones. And I'll let Ray talk more about that as we go through the video. I think that's about it, Ray. I think we could probably start rolling. Okay. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them in. If we don't answer them at the end, we'll go back and we'll answer any questions that we may have missed. But I'll be watching chat the best I can.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to add that while I'm scam baiting, Chappy is off in my Discord often. Many times in the past, you might have seen me smile while I was scam baiting. She would just suddenly say, "Just saved $80,000 rescued." This is what she's doing. So with that said, I'll show you what will eventually be the video that posts to YouTube on Tuesday.
The amount is debited from your account, that is $381. That was for auto renewal plan for your gig squad service for the next 3 years.
Why would I be paying a renewal when I was
What is the plan you have right now? Is $199 plan? Okay, just hold the line. Let me check from my side. Okay, yes, you already have a plan but is some technical reason the plan is automatically renewed on your account, that also the 300.
Okay, so what you guys see here on the screen right now, I was literally watching a scammer in the webcam that you see, as he was watching a football game. So I was watching one webcam and then watching another webcam. I could see one of the scammers watching what you see in the background. It was really interesting to see how they passed their time in the call center. And I have them blurred because these are literally prosecuted criminals, and it was just fascinating to see, like the guy in the background, he's playing a game on his cell phone. On this particular call center, I spied on them for about 3 weeks, and in the final week, I literally shut their PBX down for 4 days. I didn't completely shut it down. I would wait for calls to come in, and then I would strain the network by downing their PBX only after they started taking calls. So I was really teasing them. So they had a 45 station call center, 45 agents. Once the call rate got up to 10 calls, I would then shut down their server. And then I would wait for it to get up to 10 calls again. It went on for 4 days. It was amazing.
There are also times when we're watching them talk to a victim and the victim is not picking up, or I haven't found their phone number yet, and I'm calling them on 3 different phones at the same time, and I'll ping Ray, and Ray will go ahead and drop their audio, so they have no choice but to call the victim back, and then I have a matter of seconds to try to get to the victim as fast as I can. We don't do that often because it can spook them. There are times where we can squeeze the network throughout the calls so they start believing it's their internet. Just lots of different fun things we're able to do. When you hear them, say, I'm going to get my boss, this idiot in the background here, this person in the background here playing games, may be that make-believe boss or the make-believe bank that they go to.
So one of the things that takes place as we gain access to the scammers' victims, we start to be able to view certain aspects of the call center operation. And what you see on the screen here in the diagram above, that scammer was a manager. He was looking at call center metrics, meaning how much money they were spending to operate their call center down to the minute. So if they had 36 agents on, it would give them a real-time dollar amount on how much they were spending. That's what I used as my basis. So when I saw the calls come in and reach a volume of 10 simultaneous calls, I would then shut down the PBX. And I could watch as the numbers would change in real time on this type of software. And I was just surprised that they didn't know something was wrong, because that went on for 4 days. It was just amazing what I was able to accomplish.
Or we can watch them reset their password right in front of us, so we have their new password the minute that they do it.
Right. So other things I've done, sometimes the scammers will log in and watch Netflix using one of their victims' credentials. So what I would often do is I would do a certain trick that would let me basically go to Netflix using that victim's email address, and I would say forgot password. And the victim would get that email and they would reset their password, and the scammer would I could hear him choking because he could no longer watch the Netflix because the victim changed their password because of the result of me spying and going to Netflix and telling them I forgot my password. I've done that many times and laughed as the scammers were choking.
The first thing that we do when we take over a computer or a number of computers is to go in and download everything that we can that's important information. We've downloaded real license. We've downloaded LLCs. As they're creating an LLC, I've recorded the entire process of them making up a company in the U.S. to mule money from. And
Oh
there's
yeah.
always a controversy about deleting files or not deleting files. If
Right.
we have long term access, that's different than reversing access on any desk. That goes away the minute we disconnect. So that's not long term access. When we have long term access, deleting the file, all that does is alert them that somebody's in their system and we will lose access. What we do is we download the important information. What I then do is go back, and if there's a victim list there, which they can obviously be doing damage to while we're calling everybody on that list, is I'll go through and randomize that data. So they'll still have a list, but there'll be one thing wrong, either an address or the number, where they go back and they fight with the person who sold them the list, thinking that the list is bad or the person's moved, it's no longer their phone number. But they don't think that I'm in there because I did not delete their file.
This scammer we spied on worked off of what I call uh, doing it by the numbers. He anticipated literally that he anticipated not getting every call because all he has to do is get one victim and his week is paid for. Let's just listen to a little bit of how he tried to coax people into thinking that he was the Geek Squad trying to do coverage for stuff like refrigerators and just bizarre things. He goes through long periods of breathing, so.
Okay. Just hold the line, ma'am. Let me check from my side. What is the amount is debited for the Geek Squad service? Okay, as I can see in my system, the amount.
Again, sometimes it all depends on when I, start watching. They could be midstream, mid scam, and I don't see a phone number. I might have like a name Jennifer, and there's a lot of Jennifers in the United States that I have to try to find. But what we'll see, just like when you hear them baiting and they ask you for your zip code, and then they start to tell you where the stores are in your own area, I'll watch them look up a store to tell them to go to. And the minute the victim agrees to go to that store, I call the store. Now, that practice is good and bad. And I'll tell you why. We had one that we were watching with Pierogi, and we both were watching two different scammers. And what was odd is that they were both in the same exact part of the scam. And I sent a message to P saying, I need you right now to help me start calling. And he said, they're on the way to the bank. I got it. And I said, how do you have it? What do you mean you have it? And we thought we were both crazy because we were talking about two different scammers, but they were in the same exact part of the scam. They were both heading to the bank and to the store. Luckily, we shared the name with each other and realized that we were looking at two different scammers. So we conference called CVS together and described the woman coming down, what she was going to buy, what her name was, what the scam was. They absolutely agreed they won't let her buy the cards. We'll stop them. I contacted her bank and said she's coming down to take out this amount of money. She's on the phone with the scammer. They are going to wipe her out. The bank said, okay, we'll keep an eye out for her. When I finally got a hold of this lady, not only did they let her take out every cent that they had in the bank, CVS sold them the cards, the same people that Pierogi and I spoke to. And this woman could not buy food.
Yeah.
They took more than she had. It was disgusting. And she was, one of the victims that was crying to me. And when she said, I wish you called me earlier, I said, look at your phone log. Like, I had called her 75 times. I was like a crazy ex-boyfriend trying to get a hold of her.
Yeah.
And luckily, she said that she had been scammed so many times before. She had been scammed for $10,000. She was by herself, very confused. And I was able to get back almost all of her money. And she had already written it off. But in one of the Scam Pond videos that you'll see coming soon, you'll see some of the dialogue that I have with her via text or via phone call. And, like I said, some stores are great. Some of them will just tell us what we want to hear. and then carry on. But one of the things we have to be so careful about, everyone says, well, just text them. It's so easy, just text them. But these people are already socially engineered into believing that I'm a hacker. And I have
Yeah.
heard them read texts out loud to the scammer, which pretty much tells them somebody's in your system and we lose the whole call center. So we have to be very careful. I had an old couple, I called them Lucy, not Lucy, I called them Edith Bunker and Archie because the man was on his cell phone and he was completely believing everything and nobody would pick up. I found their landline thinking nobody's going to answer their landline, and his wife answered the landline and carried it into the office, and they got into a huge fight. And I'm saying this is when I became the hacker bee. This was the call that I got that nickname because the scammer screamed it so many times. He could hear me talking to them because I was on speaker on their landline. The victim was on the cell phone with the scammer, and so I had to say things very carefully so that he did not know I was in his system. But I was, saying that this is just a public service announcement. If you're on the phone with Amazon, or if you get a call from Amazon, and she went in and she said, my husband happens to be doing that right now, which I knew, but I didn't want to say that. But she starts screaming at her husband, and he's yelling back. It was crazy. I couldn't. I'm like, everyone, calm down. Hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. They hung up the phone, and I'm watching the scammer, and the scammer threw his headset across the room and screamed hacker B, saying the word about 10 times. Like, he just couldn't stop saying it. So he knew I was a woman, but he did not know I was watching him. We did not lose connection, and I was able to calm the couple down, but it was, your parents or grandparents when they start fighting, and it can be funny. She's like, you're an idiot. I told you not to do it. How am I supposed to know? He sounded good. You're stupid. I told you. Listen to this lady. And it went back and forth for about 7 minutes until I had to calm them down, explaining that it happens to everybody. They're great at what they do. And he did not lose any money, but you got to be very careful what you say. And there's reasons why we don't text. Sometimes we will text. It all depends.
Yeah, I wanted to add, I was in the middle of a pretty busy scam baiting live stream when Chappy was chasing down a lady who had dementia. That was the one time, and it was with this scammer that you hear. He had convinced her into going to buy gift cards, and he got her so bad he actually drained almost all of her money in her checking account and then off of her credit card. That's what Chappy was saying. He stole more money than she actually had. We had to reach out and get the bank. Chappy was able to talk the bank into refunding the money. It took a lot of work from Chappy's part. But in the live stream, Chappy had to tell me that she failed to save that victim. But Chappy said, I'm not giving up on her. And 3 days later, we were able to get most of that person's money back. It's really amazing what Chappy did. Instance?
Sure. So this was a large scam for an elderly gentleman, and they were not showing his number or his name. And I was just waiting, and all of a sudden, I saw I'm watching the scammer system, who's watching the victim system, and they went through his history of calls, and in his history of calls was his medication, and he was looking for a cheaper price for his medication. So that already tells you that this gentleman was on life-saving medication that was already too expensive for him, and they had no problem robbing him blind and leaving him without medicine and any way to get it. Again, it was disgusting. But the only thing I could do is look at the history on the victim system and see that what the medicine was he was on and what town it was. And then I finally saw a pharmacy name, and out of desperation, I start calling all of these places, and I happen to get to a pharmacist who had been ill. I explained everything. There's things they cannot tell you, or he could lose his license. He can't share, medication and victim details. So as I was speaking to him, he had a good relationship with this elderly man, thank goodness, because like it was, I think he said 20 years or so he'd been working with him, and it was life-saving medicine that he had to have. And the pharmacist knew him, and I explained the entire scam and what was happening. And he was so upset. He said, "Look, I can't give you a name, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna ask if I can take my break now. I'm gonna call you from my cell phone, not from the store." And I said, "Okay, great." So he went out to his car. He called me from his cell phone. He said, "Like, I can't give you his phone number, but I'll conference him in." So the pharmacist conferenced in the victim and told him to listen to what I had to say, and I did. I went through everything. The gentleman listened to me. He wound up hanging up on the scammer, who he was still actively on the phone with. And I told him to please shut down your computer. Shut it down. When you get home, I'll remove the software, because it's one of the things I do with every single victim. I explained the scam. First, I stopped the scam. And then, depending upon if they've already been scammed or not, I have to walk through the post scam. And then I always go in and remove the remote access software. Usually, there's 4 or 5 backdoors already installed, but it takes me, a matter of 5 minutes to remove them all, or talk them through removing it, or if it's very difficult and they just can't, understand what I'm telling them to do, shut it down. I find a family member and I walk them through removing the software. So we wound up saving this gentleman for almost $100,000 because of his pharmacist. And that pharmacist contacted me like 3 days later and told me that based on the story I told him, that he was able to find a discount for the gentleman's medication, because I said this all started with him looking for a better price, that he's struggling to pay the amount that you guys are charging. And he didn't tell the pharmacist that, I did. And the pharmacist said, "Just so you know, I went and found some online discounts for him in order to make it more affordable." And with the help of that pharmacist, we were able to save the gentleman without breaking protocol.
That's great. I tell you, this is stuff that happens while I'm scam baiting, folks. I mean, it's amazing what Chappy's what she's doing, and that's why I want to stress the scam pond is a real thing. When we show those stats, that's where the stats come from largely. Imagine having a job doing this. I mean, outside of stealing money, but the boredom of getting hung up all the time. This guy that we were spying on got hung up 99% of the time. Let alone it being a graveyard shift, yeah.
But it's a numbers game. So while it's a matter of he loses a lot, he doesn't need to win them all. He only needs to win a few. And he did get victims.
Yeah, so
this was actually the story I told about the lady where they took more than he had, when Pierogi and I both called the CVS together. This was one of his scams. Absolutely. So I had one woman, was an elderly woman who was really distraught. So some of these are, you feel fantastic when you save someone, but a lot of these calls leave you feeling pretty upset. Dan, us talking is live, but I'm just answering chat real quickly. Ray and I talking, that's live, but we're showing you a video. So when you hear the scammer talking, that is not live. That's recording that we made while we were watching them.
Right.
So the lady that was very, very upset, she had lost a significant amount of money. And as I was talking to her, you can tell when somebody is so distraught that something wrong could happen. And this particular lady was a widow. She was by herself at home. And and she was trembling, shaking, crying. And mind you, while I'm talking to her, I am frantically looking for a family member anywhere, and I am not finding anybody. But she then tells me that she just doesn't want to be in this world anymore, that people are too mean. I can't live without any money, and I'd rather just be with my husband in heaven. So those are the type of calls that can really scare the you know what out of you. Often I'll have to call the police to do a wellness check and stay on the person until we get there. Um, I asked her if she wanted me to have somebody come, and she said no, but I was able to convince her to go to the ER. You might have heard this because this was one of our Scam Pond updates that I gave, but for those who didn't hear it, I stayed on the phone with her. I called the Uber for her and Ubered her to the ER. I did not hang up until I was worried that if I hung up, she might take action. She might not have, but that's just not a risk I'm willing to live with. So I stayed on till she got to the doctor. She gave the phone to me. I explained to the doctor what was going on. He hung up. I disconnected the call, and I got a call from the doctor 2 days later. She was admitted. I also found her niece that was an hour and a half away after I hung up, and she had no idea this happened, but she was headed to the hospital. The doctor called me a couple days later and said, I just want you to know you saved a life, because I think she was going to do what she said. We did have to admit her, and then he said, "Who are you?" She said she did not know you, and why would you do this? So I explained to him who I was. I talked about our community and what an amazing community it is, and with all of you guys out there. And he had no idea. He literally joined Patreon for a couple scam baiters because I sent him some videos, and he said, I didn't I knew about scams, but I had no idea. And he said, to be honest, if somebody told me they got, robbed and might want to take their life, I wouldn't consider it as serious as this really is, because I didn't know what happens. I didn't know these people are mentally tortured and drained. Before they get here, they've already been through so much. And if they're a widow and if they want, to take their life, they're already sad, they already missed their loved one, and they don't have family that's local, they might do something crazy. So, I mean, it was very nice, but it was more important that I educated, the doctor, and he said, I'm going to talk to the other ER doctors so that they understand if we get a call like this, it isn't something to brush off thinking, well, so what? Somebody stole your wallet. Somebody did this. You could live. Because this is far more than just a robbery. As you've heard, some of these scammers, they mentally abuse these people.
All right, so that's about all we have for today, folks. We just wanted to give you an introduction to the Scam Pond and what you can expect to see. It's come out of the, just as a result of me showing some of what Scam Pond has been doing. You're now going to be able to view videos on YouTube that Chappy's going to help me create. It'll give you an idea of the work that we do that you don't see, because it is really big. And we just want people to know that there's just much more to the Scambait. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes.